Lollipops, eh? They're the best. Oh, true. I'll just move that back. Well, that's cool. It's a story about making mistakes. Hey, how was your April Fools? Was anyone subjected to any treatment? Was it? Oh, yes, Roger's birthday, excellent. Well done, sir. I woke up April 1st and I was quite hungry. I was looking forward to my breakfast. And so I got in there and I grabbed my muesli and I threw it in the bowl and then I went to the milk, grabbed the milk, walked across and I thought, man, that muesli looks a bit different. And it was all these little balls, and I thought, oh, well, whatever, and I was about that close, right, off pouring milk in and I thought, it smells a bit meaty, like it smells and then I recognised those muesli as the cat biscuits. And I was so close to putting them in the microwave, I tell you. And Ariana just sat there like absolutely deadpan, looking at me like straight-faced. And so, yes, my daughter had, it was a good prank actually. I tell you what, I'm so glad it wasn't mixed in with the muesli. I reckon I would have just eaten it if it was mixed in, so. Yeah. No, you didn't hear that. So yeah, April Fools, eh? But hey, this morning this story. When I started looking at it, it's always been one that's a bit controversial, I guess, and it's about eating the crumbs, and it's about what Jesus interacting with this woman from Syria, and she's. And I guess, it's Jesus talking about dogs as well, and in that society, like to be labelled a dog or to be associated with a dog, was a huge insult. So we're just going to read through it and actually sort of understand what Jesus, what was he talking about? What was he trying to get across in this little parable, and that's part of the story. So it's Mark 7:24 to 30. It's just 6 verses. Jesus left that place and went to the vicinity of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know it, yet he could not keep his presence secret. In fact, as soon as she heard about him, a woman whose little daughter was possessed by an impure spirit came and fell at his feet. The woman was a Greek, born in Syrian Phoenicia. She begged Jesus to drive out the demon out of her daughter. First, let the children eat all they want, he told her, for it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. And Lord, she replied, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. And then he told her, for such a reply you may go. The demon has left your daughter. And she went home and found her child lying on the bed and the demon gone. So it's a real short little story, eh? And yet actually, I want to sort of unpack it, and this would have been in their culture like shocking, and so I wanted to just unpack it. And so Jesus went to this place called Tyre. So I've got a wee map. Can you show that map? If you know, so you got the Jordan going all the way through the centre of Israel, and right up there's Lake Galilee. And that's where Jesus has been focusing all his ministry around, Bethsaida, Chorazin, Tiberias, etc., Nazareth. So he's been operating all around there. And so this story, it's like after he had this conflict with the Pharisees, he's just bolted and he's gone straight across up to the right to Tyre. It's on the coast, which is modern day Lebanon. Okay, and so this place was it had a history. Like, it had a history with Israel. It is the home of Jezebel from the Old Testament, and who almost led the whole nation away from Baal with Baal worship. And in fact, if you remember the story of her, like she met a very untimely end and was eaten by dogs, none other. And so there's this tension immediately in the story. Like, why would Jesus go to Tyre? Like, what the heck? Like, Tyre is like, it's like, if you were going to pick a city that was sort of, that represented, that Gentiles, that represented paganism, like Tyre was it. It was considered like a very dark place. And right through the history, like during the Maccabean revolts, which was just before Jesus' time, they aligned themselves with the enemy, and they fought Israel, and they fought Jerusalem, and so they were known basically as, even Josephus, who was the Jewish historian who lived in the time of Jesus, he speaks of Tyre as Israel's bitterest enemies. So Jesus has gone there, and and it's not really clear why he's gone to this place. So like it could be because you remember right from about chapter 6, he was tired and he was worn out, and he drew the disciples away, but the crowds followed him, etc. So tiredness could be a factor. The fact that the crowds were stirred up and they wanted to make him king, like his popularity was huge at this time. It was probably at its peak, and so maybe that was a part of it. Also, he had this conflict with the Pharisees. Remember he spoke about with the cleanliness laws, and he had that a big encounter with them that we read about just literally the previous story. And so maybe that was a factor in actually, I just need to remove myself and I just give these guys a bit of space, give myself a bit of space. Maybe it's to teach the disciples, because he's been trying to teach them. Remember he called them dull, and so maybe it was like just wanted to find some place, some space to be able to speak into them and to unpack a few of them's parables, etc. And so maybe it's a combination of all those things, but we don't know. But Jesus has ended up in this infamous place, the home of Jezebel. And in a sense, it actually universalizes the Messiah. Like, this would have pushed the Jewish concept of the Messiah to it would have pushed every barrier in terms of gender, in terms of nationality, in terms of religiousness, and so Jesus is entering this place that and basically say, hey, I'm in a word that he's saying, I'm the Messiah over the Gentiles as well. And so verse 25 says that that he's gone there, and it says, and trying to get some space, right? And it says, in fact, as soon as she heard about him, a woman whose little daughter was possessed by an impure spirit came and fell at his feet. And the woman was a Greek, born in Syrian Phoenicia, and she begged him to drive the demon out of her. And so he doubles down, doesn't he, on that detail of where she's from. And so it would be almost inconceivable to think that this woman would meet a rabbi or a Pharisee. She would define what uncleanliness is. Like, all the laws about weren't really ascribed to the Gentiles. They just were unclean. They were innately unclean. You would not want to associate with anyone from Tyre, and let alone a woman, let alone one who is a daughter who is oppressed by a demon. It's sort of like this, and yet in it all, she tracks down where Jesus is, right? And she's never met him before. She's a complete stranger, and she goes into his house and tracks him down, like, which is like, that's the definition of boldness, isn't it? Like, who does that? Like, you're a little bit standoffish just entering into someone else's house that you haven't met, let alone like a teacher and a healer and someone from a different culture to you, and someone whose culture would say that you are innately unclean. And so she is driven, and I guess that's a mum for you, isn't it? Like, this is not just someone who's, they're just really bold, but this woman is like, you do anything for your kids. And so I guess Jesus was her last hope. And so she just goes for it. She's got nothing, no credit on her side. She's got nothing to offer. She's got no bargaining chips on the table. And yet she doesn't apologize. She doesn't back down. She boldly drops at Jesus' feet and begs her to heal her daughter and to seek an audience with him. Even Levi, the Jewish tax collector, he probably would have taken a step back and thought, man, who do you think you are? And he would have probably raised an eyebrow having this woman just enter the house uninvited. And it's interesting that this happened straight after the conflict with the purity laws that Jesus pushed back on and saying that there's nothing external that makes you unclean. It's actually what comes out of your heart. And so it's sort of doubling down on that and saying, actually, so the Gentiles are not unclean either. That associating with them is okay, and I've come for them as well. And so Jesus' response, though, is rather jarring, isn't it? And so she begs him, hey, can you heal my daughter? Can you help her? And his response is, first, let the children eat all they want, he told her. For it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. Whoa, that's a bit rough. I mean, to toss something to the dogs, it's like, what are you trying to say? Are you saying I'm a dog? That's a pretty harsh parable to say, to respond with. It's pretty insulting, In New Zealand, we love dogs, right? We're in the English, but in Israel and in their culture, dogs were scavengers. They were wild. They were unruly. They were unclean. We have that Kiwi term, don't we? We say, oh, you mongrel, get in behind, and because a dog, the opportunists, aren't they? I remember taking our dog for a walk, and it will come back with a half-decaying rabbit in its mouth, and happy as happy, or walking along, and there'd be some, muck on the ground. It would go and roll in it, and you'd be like, oh no, and you have to, bath them in that. And so how they would have, they were wild, they were unruly, they were the definition of unclean. You don't go near dogs, especially wild dogs. And so Jesus he's like, I don't, give it to the children. Don't toss the food to the dogs. But there seems to be, there's something else going on here. And if you dig a little further, the word that Jesus used there, it's what's called the diminutive term for dogs. And it meant a small dog or a puppy. And so maybe he's not talking about the wild dogs and the scavengers, but he's talking about a dog that would be under your table, that would be, shuffling around in your home and would be like a pet. And so that is kind of like it's sort of a half an invitation and half an insult, isn't it? It's sort of, he's like, no, first let the children eat. And that first kind of gives you a ray of hope. You think, oh, does that mean, that I can come in second? There's a possibility for me to get some food as well. But no matter which way you look at it, it is still pretty insulting to compare this woman to the Gentiles to a dog, to dogs. And but isn't Jesus isn't he supposed to be a nice guy? Isn't he meek and mild, and he wouldn't stir up trouble? And this is a complete stranger. He has no relationship with her. And she's desperate. She's a mother. She's not even coming for herself. She's coming for a child. And to give such a pointed response, man, is what's going on? It kind of offends our sense of justice. We think, oh yeah, give the Pharisees a go. Tell them they're the hypocrites. That's, that's justified. We can understand. But what about, that's warranted, but what about a mum begging for a daughter? And so I wonder Jesus, I think, is like testing a heart. Is asking, like, kind of, what's in there? What's underneath? Is she going to be offended? Is she going to walk away? Is she feeling entitled and thinks, come on, Jesus, you've healed these other people, you can heal me. And there's that moment where I think she could have, it could have been a Will Smith moment, couldn't it? And it could have just blown up. She could have sworn at him and just walked out the room, and but that's kind of the tension that's in the air. It's kind of like, what's your response going to be? And of course, in verse 28, she says, "Lord," she replied, "even the dogs under the table get to eat the children's crumbs." It's like, wow, what a response. And man, she's obviously got some wit, this one, but immediately she's picked up the fact that dogs don't just wait patiently, do they, to grab the crumbs? As the kids are eating it's like, woohoo, dinner time, it's meal number 2, dogs will be swishing around under the table, and as soon as a crumb drops, they're in, they grab it. And so it's almost like, she's accepted her status as a Gentile. She's accepted her status that Jesus was talking about his mission and his ministry, that he's first come for Israel. That was his primary audience, if you will. And then secondly, to the Gentiles. And so she's got that connection. She's just implicitly picked that up without offense. And yet she doesn't even know Israel's God, and yet she still stays there and pleads that for a few crumbs of power, for a few crumbs of his revelation and discernment, would Jesus, would you bring revelation and would you pray for my daughter? Would you set her free? Would you offer a few crumbs of your messianic authority to be exercised on behalf of her daughter? And so in a sense, she recognises that there's enough for all of us. She recognises that there's enough there for her as well. And it's not like she's fighting for her rights, and it's not like she's, like some, entitled sort of snobby teenager that's kind of just expecting everything the world to stop for them or something. That she's actually, wrestling with Jesus, and she's wanting him to fight for her. It's a bit like Jacob in the Old Testament when it says that he fought for the angel for his favor, for what he by right was entitled to, not because of anything that was on his behalf, but because of who God is, because of who his character is, because of the promises that God had given Jacob. And in the same way, she's heard about this Jesus. And it says actually in chapter 3, verse 8, that actually people from Tyre came across and they listened to Jesus. They flocked to him. So it wasn't like he was unknown. They knew who he was, what he carried. And so, maybe he'd heard about this guy and heard the messages and the grace that he offered. And so she's coming to him and appealing him from that angle. And so she gets what she asks for, doesn't she? Jesus offers him this grace. And so just pause and let that sink in. This is the first person, right, who has actually understood a parable. And from the whole, first 7 chapters of the gospel, including his own disciples, they always come to him, "Oh, I don't, can you explain the parable, please, Jesus? Can you unpack it for me?" And here's a Gentile, a pagan woman from Tyre who implicitly gets it. And she gets the gospel. She gets the challenge and the hidden promise that's in it, and that's what's contained in the parable. And she responds within the parable itself, and saying, hey, Jesus, even the dogs get a few of the crumbs. So it's like, he must have gone, I bet he was like, oh my goodness. Like, you've finally someone who's understood, what I've been teaching for years, and that's why his response is like, for such a reply, you may go. The demon has left your daughter. Like, how cool is that? That she gets his mission. She gets what he stands for. She gets that there's this hidden promise in his message that if you humble yourself, if you come to me, not on your status, not on who you think you are, but you come in and approach me because of who I am and because of what I carry, then you'll receive it. You'll receive the kingdom. And so this woman is the first person who gets it. And of course, it's amazing. And it sounds like she just turns around and goes home. Like, it's not like I was thinking, what power to just go, your daughter's healed, the demon's gone. Like, it didn't even say a rebuke or command it or to go or something. It's just like from afar. He hasn't even met the daughter. It's like, your daughter's free. And she's like, great, thank you. See ya. Whereas she might be thinking, okay, Jesus, hold on for 10 minutes. I'm just going to zip. I'll be back in a jiffy. I'll just confirm that she's okay, But it's not like that. She just has this implicitly, it's like, thank you for the crumbs. That's all I was asking, and just leaves. And wow, like it's just stunning the humility that she had. And I was reading, Dwight Moody, who was a famous preacher, he was reported to have said that Jesus sent no one away empty-handed except for those who were full of themselves. And this woman, just is the picture of humility, isn't she? That she recognizes, I'm not entitled to receive anything from you, God, but I'm hungry, and I'm still going to go for it, and I still want what you carry. And so she trusted that, didn't she? That the spillover of power of the gospel was for her as well. And so we can either get, offended and walk away, can't we? And actually, it's really interesting that, and it follows on really, is that God, he'll test our hearts. Like Jesus said, it's like actually what defiles you was what's in your heart, not what you externally touch or what you externally eat. And so it's like he tests her heart in this situation. What's in there? Not because he probably knew, but it's almost to expose it for her and for us, And often that's the way, we have an opportunity, don't we? And to maybe it's to step into worship or whatever, but it's like, oh, but I don't really like that song. A speaker comes to town, who's got a real healing ministry or something. You think, oh, but I don't like the way they wear. I don't like the clothes they wear, and I don't like this or I don't like that. And often it's interesting how God, some people who we really don't particularly, you may find that you get on well with whatever, but they carry a powerful gift. And the question then is, are you going to pursue the kingdom? Are you going to pursue the king? Or are you going to walk away because you don't like the container? So that it's the same, question. Like God tests our hearts often in terms of where we're at. And of course, he wants us to have the response of this woman. And the other way we can be is we can get so down on ourselves that we could, like the woman, we could go, oh yeah, I can say I don't have any I'm not entitled to anything and whatnot, and I can see, man, God, I've got a real sinful heart, but we can bury ourselves in that and think, no, there's just no way that God can love me. There's no way, we write ourselves off from serving or from doing anything, or God could use me in my life. It's like, no, it's I'm rubbish, and that's the other side of it, is that we can have such a low opinion of the gospel that we write ourselves off. We don't think that what God's done on the cross actually, it's not good enough for my situation. And this was what John Newton had came across. He was the famous pastor, slave trader who wrote Amazing Grace. And a guy wrote a letter to him and who was really depressed and sort of outlined all how terrible he is and how actually he didn't believe God could use him and that he'd gone too far. And so John Newton's response was this is the letter that we've still got. It was in the book that I was reading, and he said, "You say you feel overwhelmed with guilt and a sense of unworthlessness. Well, indeed, you cannot be too aware of your evils inside of yourself. But then you express not only a too low opinion of yourself, which is right, but also a too low opinion of the person, the work, and the promises of the Redeemer, which is wrong. You complain of sin, but when I look at your complaints, they are so full of self-righteousness, pride, and unbelief and impatience that they are little better than the worst evils that you complain of." And so I thought, wow, what a great way of putting it, isn't it? Is that we can so write ourselves off, but in a sense, it's actually another form of pride, where we're actually going, God's going, would you step out? Would you? I want you to serve, or I want you to accept what I did on the cross. And when we go, no, I can't do that. It's I've written myself off, but it's actually putting our personal opinion and a judgment of ourselves over God's opinion of us. And so it's actually a form of pride. So we can go two ways, can't we? We can miss the invitation through being offended, or through our own pride and lack of truly understanding what the gift is, that what God has in front of us. And so that's that story of the woman. So I just want to encourage you this morning that maybe there's a place where actually God's been tapping on things in your heart, and He's been wanting you to respond. But you've, for whatever reason, whether you've walked away, and in an offence, or maybe in a sense of, oh God, I can't do that. I'm not good enough. I'm not bright enough. I've written my history and my past has written myself off, and He's all the while He's going, no, I want you to respond. I want you to step into the new. If that's you this morning, then I really encourage you. It's like the invitation is still there to come forward. The invitation is there to pick up the crumbs and to eat it, and to actually, like that woman, to grab hold of His promises that are on your life, and to step into what God has got to do, for us into the next chapter. And so, it's a team. Do you want to come up? Thanks, Jesse. I'd just like to pray, and then we'll they can lead us in one more song to close. All right, do you want to stand up? Father, I thank You for the gospel. Lord, I thank You for the power of the gospel. Lord, I thank You that, Lord, that there's hope for every single person. Lord, that our history and our past, where we've come from, Lord, where we were born, our gender, our social status, Lord, all of those things mean nothing to You. Do not disqualify us from the gospel. They don't disqualify us from a future. Lord, but there is a hope in You. And Father, so I pray this morning, Lord, for a boldness, Lord, over this church, Lord, for the revelation of just the hope that is in You, that the power and the authority that is in You, Lord, that we can carry those crumbs, Lord, that we can not only receive that, but Lord, that we can give those things to other people. And Lord, and that is the power of the gospel. And so, Father, I pray this morning, Lord, for that, Lord, that we would boldly step into the new. And as Penny's word came through, Lord, is that actually, and in that, Lord, it becomes the radicalness of the gospel, Lord, that we can bring change in society, we can bring change in families, change in relationships through obedience. And so, Lord, we pray for that humility in our own hearts, Lord, that anything that blocks You, Lord, just pray for an exposing of that, and Lord, that we would be able to lay those things down. In Jesus' name, amen. Awesome. Hey, if you've got anything you'd like prayer for this morning, then feel free to come forward. We'd love to pray for healing, and maybe you've got a sticky situation that you know God's asking you to step into and to deal with, or then I really encourage you to come forward. We'd love to pray for that as well. So bless you. Have a great day. We've got plenty of time to enjoy catching up with each other, and we'll finish on a song. But really encourage you, if you want to come forward, please do.